Hey, this is Andrew bringing you a Keyforge rules update, and so this has been something that FFG has been talking about for a little while. They've recognized that there are certain interactions and timing issues that people have found confusing. People are not quite sure how things work, and they've been talking about putting together a guide to and clarifications for this. So here it is. There's some other stuff that comes out with this update as well. This is if you're going by the way that things are named on the rulebook labels, it's version 1.4 of the rulebook. If you're going by the file names, it's version 10. So anyway, that doesn't matter. So yeah, now if you want to find these for yourself in the future, you can always go to fantasyflightgames.com and then you click on the news link up at the top, and you can find news, and you can actually like filter down to Keyforge news as well. Although the way it works is kind of wonky. So there we go. Yeah, but anyway, you can click through from the main news page as well. Ooh, cool. They have, well, that's not for, I don't know if that's just for X-Wing. We'll see. I'll look at that later. Okay. That really just went up. Okay, so having said that, there's an explanation in here, kind of like a preface before going to the rulebook from Brad that talks about what it's going to address. And overall, these rules updates, I like them. I think the overall goal is to make the rule set more streamlined and efficient. There's less to worry about and more clarity in the things that are in the game. And this should actually, generally speaking, reduce the barrier of entry for new players by making things clear like this. So there's going to be a big focus on the destroyed timing. We'll come to that. There's going to be some card errata. This is always a little bit of a bummer to see this, but I think these are good changes. I haven't actually looked at the changes for No Drone and Life for Life yet. Getting rid of Leave Play for Magda when that was the only card that had the Leave Play timing point makes a lot of sense. That's just going to be better for people. And yeah, we'll see how that works out. And then there's some clarification of what for each means that'll come out. Clarification about replacement effects, that's actually a pretty common concept in these types of games that I think a lot of people weren't confused by because they're used to replacement effects. Certainly as a Netrunner player, I was already very familiar with these, but it's good to have them clarified within the documents for this game, and then clarification about the as if it were yours and as if you controlled it. So we'll go through the whole document and just all the red text. And by the way, I just want to say again, like the red is a little bit of a bummer, but overall, I just think this makes the game more approachable, easier for new people to jump in, and there's less room for confusion and getting frustrated as a serious player. So I think this is absolutely the right move, and very happy they came out with this. So yeah, so let's just go through, find all the red. Okay, so the first clarification here is in step 5 where you draw cards. It says cards are drawn one at a time. I haven't found that to be a confusing thing, but I'm glad that it is clarified. That makes sense. I guess it just is there to clarify to you that, you know, if it says draw 5 cards, it doesn't mean like, and your deck only has 3, it doesn't mean you draw 5, oh, we only draw 3. And then if it said draw 1 after that, then we would, I don't know, I guess, anyway, it seems like a reasonable clarification. Doesn't hurt anybody. All right, now we have for action, it clarifies that, yeah, when a creature is used to trigger its action ability, it exhausts and the action ability resolves. Okay. I'm not sure, that must have said something there before, but there's still no clarification here if you have multiple action abilities, if all of them trigger. So that's interesting. This almost seems to say no because it says that action ability resolves. Okay, so that can maybe use further clarification. Okay, clarification on Omni, that Omni ability resolves. Okay. All right, ability and card ability. Abilities that interact with a card after it is destroyed can interact with that card while it is in the discard pile. Abilities on a creature, artifact, or upgrade are only active while that card is, and can only be triggered while that card is in play unless the ability explicitly references being used from an out-of-play area. But it is interesting that abilities that interact with the card after it is destroyed can interact with that card while it is in the discard pile. That still, as far as I know, doesn't totally clarify the collector worm issue, because it doesn't say after it's destroyed, it just says, after you fight with it. So I still have a question about that. Okay, clarification on alpha. It says during the current step. That used to say step 3. So this is a good clarification. This means that if you have a strange gizmo and a Jargoggle, and the Jargoggle has something with alpha under it, the Jargoggle dying will cause the card with alpha to be played. It'll work because you haven't played or used any other cards during step 1. And it doesn't matter that it's not step 3. So that's a good clarification. That makes more sense with what's actually printed on the card with alpha. Okay, as if it were yours, as if you controlled it. If a card effect instructs you to use a card as if it were yours, or as if you controlled it, it causes you to use the card even if you don't control it. Okay, that makes sense. You never gain control of the card during this process, but you resolve the effect as if you controlled the card. When using a card as if it were yours, as if you controlled it, that instructs you to sacrifice the card as part of the effect. The card is still sacrificed as if you controlled it. Okay, some people had questions about that. This made the most sense to me, but the clarification's good. It confused some people. All right, control. If an ability refers to cards that a player has in play, is referring to cards that player controls, not cards that player owns. That also makes the most sense, but it's good to have the clarification. Okay, huge section here on destroyed. This is one of the major things they've been working on. When a card is destroyed by a card effect, or when a creature has damage on it equal to or greater than its power, that card is tagged for destruction. That's a new concept. After it is tagged, then that card's destroyed abilities trigger, and finally the tagged card is placed into its owner's discard pile. Makes sense. If multiple cards are simultaneously tagged for destruction, the active player chooses the order in which to resolve the destroyed abilities of any of those cards, and also chooses the order in which those cards are placed in their owner's discard piles. Once a creature has been tagged for destruction, the only thing that can remove this tag is a replacement effect that uses the word instead and replaces the destruction of that creature. So this means, for example, that Armageddon Cloak, which has a, instead destroy Armageddon Cloak, that will prevent the destruction. However, and actually Ward also replaces the destruction effect. However, an effect like let's say creatures are going to die due to damage, but Doom of the Martyr fires and heals them, they're still tagged for destruction and they will still be destroyed. So an effect that heals a tagged creature does not remove the destroyed tag. An effect that may move a tagged creature to a different out of play area, such as the hand or archives, but that creature is still considered to have been destroyed for the purposes of card effects. So, for example, if there's a Soul Snatcher in play and Dust Imp is destroyed, the owner of Dust Imp gets 3 amber. They get, that's actually not, that didn't move it. If you have Bad Penny on the table and there's a Soul Snatcher and Bad Penny gets destroyed, Bad Penny's owner still gets an amber from the Soul Snatcher, even though Bad Penny went back to their hand. Let's see. If a destroyed ability causes more cards to be destroyed, they are also tagged for destruction, and their destroyed effects will also trigger before cards are placed in the discard pile. Okay, so that means if if let's say I have a creature with Soul Catcher. Is it Soul Catcher? Let's say I have a creature. Oh, let's say I have a creature with Phoenix Heart. That creature gets destroyed. Its destroyed ability triggers, bringing it to my hand and dealing 3 damage to all creatures. Now there are more creatures that are going to die. Their destroyed effects happen before any cards would get moved to the discard pile. Okay, a card. Players cannot choose to sacrifice or destroy a creature that is already tagged for destruction. A card that is already tagged for destruction cannot be tagged for destruction again. And any effect that attempts to destroy or sacrifice that card fails. That card still only triggers its destroyed abilities once. I think if I'm interpreting this right, this means that if we have, I think it is Soul Catcher or Soul Keeper, and let's say somebody plays, and I have it on the smallest creature on the board, and somebody plays Standardized Testing. My opponent has the largest creature on the board. It's tagged for destruction by Standardized Testing. My creature is also tagged for destruction, and its upgrade says that when it's destroyed, destroy the most powerful enemy creature. That card will actually pick the biggest enemy creature, and it will fail to mark it for destruction a second time. It won't then pick the next one. It just fails, if I'm reading this right. Neil Crompton pointed out in the Fifth Planet podcast, if you had a situation where your opponent has 2 largest creatures, at that point, you might have the ability to, and you have the ability to choose between them, and one of them wasn't marked for destruction for some reason, you would have to choose, and you would have to choose the one that wasn't being destroyed yet. But that seems like a real corner case. Let's see. That card still only triggers its destroyed abilities once. You can't trigger destroyed abilities multiple times in the same, without it getting played out again. A card only triggers destroyed abilities that it had at the time it was tagged for destruction. If a card gains a destroyed ability after it is already tagged, that ability is not triggered. This is why Archimedes will no longer archive the entire battle line. Cards that are sacrificed also count as being destroyed. They are tagged for destruction following the same process outlined above. Example, Dan has Archimedes in the middle of 4 other creatures, and his opponent plays Gateway East, destroying all creatures. First, all of Dan's creatures are tagged for destruction. Then Archimedes' neighbors' destroyed effects trigger archiving them. The battle line immediately collapses, but Archimedes' new neighbors have already been tagged for destruction and cannot gain a new destroyed ability, so they are placed in the discard pile along with Archimedes. Okay? Emily is another example. Emily has a Jehu the Bureaucrat, Doom of the Martyr with 2 damage, and Commander Remiel with 1 damage in play. Her opponent plays a Poison Wave, dealing 2 damage to each creature. This damage causes Doom of the Martyr and Commander Remiel to be tagged for destruction. Doom of the Martyr's destroyed effect triggers healing Jehu and Remiel. Since Remiel was already tagged for destruction, it still goes to the discard pile with Duma, but Jehu survives unscathed. Yep, makes sense. Another example, Marcus has a Groggins with a Phoenix Heart in play. His opponent Janelle has a Dust Imp with a Soul Keeper, a Drumble, and a Shaffles in play. Marcus attacks Dust Imp with Groggins, causing Dust Imp to be tagged for destruction. Dust Imp's destroyed ability triggers ability and the destroyed ability that Soul Keeper grants it both trigger simultaneously. Marcus chooses to let his opponent gain the 2 amber first, then trigger the Soul Keeper, which will destroy Marcus's most powerful creature, Groggins. When Groggins is tagged for destruction, the Phoenix Heart attached to it triggers, returning Groggins to Marcus's hand and dealing 3 damage to each other creature. This damage then tags Drumble and Shaffles for destruction. Finally, all the destroyed creatures still in play, Dust Imp, Drumble, and Shaffles, are placed in their owner's discard pile in the order of the active player's choice. Alright, so cool. That clarifies a lot of things and is pretty reasonable. It works with kind of the way that people initially read these cards, which I think, or certainly that I did, which I think is good. Alright, for each. Some abilities include an effect that uses the term for each to determine the magnitude of the event. Unless otherwise specified, a player may choose to affect a different card with each instance of such an effect. Example, Shard of Pain reads, played, deal 1 damage to an enemy creature for each friendly shard. It doesn't read play, deal 1 damage. It reads action, deal 1 damage to an enemy creature for each friendly shard. And that damage may be distributed among multiple creatures. So you can spread the damage, which makes it really good with Misery Exploit. I love that they have a typo in the clarification. Well, they can fix that. Some abilities specify that a player must choose a creature, then do an effect to that creature using the term for each. Such abilities only affect a single creature. Okay, so it says choose a creature for each blah, do X to that creature. Each instance will happen to that same creature. Okay. Oh yeah, Red Planet Raygun reads this creature gains Reap. Choose a creature, deal 1 damage to that creature for each Mars creature in play. That damage must be dealt only to the chosen creature. It cannot be distributed among multiple creatures. Makes sense. And good, that's templating. That means like there's a clear, okay, when it says this, it means this. When it says that, it means the other thing. Lasting effects. Some card abilities create effects or conditions that affect the game for a specified period of time. Full moon, library access, etc. People were confused about this. It's good to have it spelled out. Such as until the start of your next turn or for the remainder of the turn. These are called lasting effects. Lasting effects are treated as constant abilities that are active for the duration specified by the effect. A lasting effect persists even if the card that created the effect leaves play. If a lasting effect affects cards in play, it applies to all cards in play during the specified period, regardless of whether they were in play at the time the lasting effect was established. That question hadn't come up, but it's a good clarification. Move. When a card instructs you to move amber, take that amber off of that card location and move it to another card location. This does not count as capturing, stealing, or losing amber. When a card instructs you to move damage, take that damage off of one card and place it onto another card. This does not count as damaging the second card and is not prevented by armor or other effects that prevent damage. This means if you Guardian Demon to move damage onto your own creature with armor, the damage is actually moved. It doesn't get negated by the armor. Okay. Interesting. When a card instructs you to move a creature, that creature must remain... Oh no, you know what? I'm wrong. Guardian Demon says deal it. Yeah, it does. Okay. There's another card that redistributes the damage. Okay. Okay, this does not count as damaging the second card and is not prevented by armor or other effects that prevent damage. When a card instructs you to move a creature, that creature must remain under its current controller's control unless the card also specifies that a different player takes control of that creature. Okay, that makes sense. Omega. After a card with the Omega keyword is played, the current step of the game ends. The active player cannot play, use, or discard any more cards for the remainder of the step. Any pending effects and triggers complete their resolution, then play continues to the next step. Okay, interesting. It's a good clarification that the step ends, and any pending things means there's a stack. Any pending things do happen. Okay. Replacement effects. Some abilities completely replace the resolution of another effect or game step. These abilities are referred to as replacement effects, can be identified by the use of the word instead. A replacement effect specifies what part of an effect or game step it is replacing. When that effect or part of an effect or game step would occur, it does not occur, and the replacement effect happens in its place. If a replacement effect causes something that is being destroyed to not be destroyed, this removes the destroyed tag from it. The replacement effect remains as a lasting effect while any destroyed abilities are triggering, and does not fully resolve until the card would be put into the discard pile. Oh, interesting. They're going to have an example here. Example, Aaron plays Dimension Door, then reaps with a creature. Normally, Aaron would gain 1 amber from reaping with the creature. However, the Dimension Door has set up a replacement effect that replaces the gaining of the amber from reaping with stealing an amber, so Aaron steals 1 instead. Example, Catherine has a Commander Remiel with an Armageddon Cloak attached to it, and her opponent plays Gateway to Deast, destroying each creature in play. The destroyed effect given to Remiel by the Armageddon Cloak is a replacement effect that is replacing the destruction of the creature. This destruction is being replaced with healing the creature fully and destroying the Armageddon Cloak instead. This causes the destroyed tag to be removed from Commander Remiel and be given to the Armageddon Cloak. Example, Jamie plays Ronnie Wristclocks while her opponent has 7 amber. Normally, Ronnie Wristclocks play effect steals 1 amber from her opponent, but since Jamie's opponent has 7 or more amber, the replacement effect kicks in and replaces stealing 1 amber with stealing 2 amber instead. Okay, Now on to this. It does seem though like, well, and Armageddon Cloak is the only case where this matters so far, but it'll matter more when Ward comes out. That because the replacement effect for destroyed is a lasting effect and doesn't resolve until the card would be put into the discard pile, it means that the destroyed abilities would resolve. So if you have a card, like if you have a Dust Imp that is warded and it gets destroyed, you'll gain 2 amber and it won't actually go in the discard pile, if I'm reading that right. So that's an interesting note. Okay. Stun and stun status card. When a creature becomes stunned, place a stun status card on it. While a creature is stunned, it cannot fight, reap, or use action or omni abilities. A stunned, ready creature of the active house can be used by exhausting it to remove its stun status card. If a card effect would cause a stunned creature to fight, reap, or use an action or omni ability, instead that creature is exhausted and the stun status card is removed. They already clarified this in a video. This, for example, means that if you use anger on a stunned creature, it'll unstun it even if there are no creatures on your opponent's side of the board. Okay. No amendments to these. That's makes sense, I guess. I guess they'll have to add in pages for Star Alliance and the Saurians, I guess. Alright, cool. Errata. Magda the Rat should read elusive, play, steal 2. If Magda the Rat leaves play, your opponent steals 2. Okay. So that's a lasting effect. Got it. Is Fiznodrone should read play, archive a card. The interesting thing about Magda the Rat, and this does change it slightly, it means that if Shadow of Dis was played, it will still happen because that lasting effect was on there and it isn't coming from the current card text. So that's an interesting change. I can't think of any other ways this matters. Is Fiznodrone should read play, archive a card. You may purge an archived card. If you do, stun a creature. What does it actually say? It actually says, play archive a card. You may purge an archived card to stun a creature. I see. Okay, it doesn't change it. It just fixes the templating. Okay. Life for a life should read, play, sacrifice a creature. If you do, deal 6 to a creature. Sure, okay. So just a templating change. It really isn't a functional change. Okay. I have chosen House Logos to be my active house this turn and start off by playing Library Access. I then play Wild Wormhole. In what order do I resolve this combination of effects? When you play a Wild Wormhole, after playing a Library Access, the following happens in this order. First, you gain 1 amber from Wild Wormhole's amber bonus. Second, Library Access's effect and Wild Wormhole's play effect are simultaneous. They are both after, and this actually comes up later. We've known that play effects are after it's played. One of the clarifications that's going to come up later is that each time also is actually in the after time slot. So they're in the same time slot, so you can resolve, the active player can resolve them in any order. When you play the Wild Wormhole card, you gain amber from any amber bonus on the card played from the top of your deck. If there are any play effects on the card played from the top of your deck, they are simultaneous with Library Access's effect as triggered by that second play. You may resolve them in either order. So what that means is, let's say you choose to resolve Wild Wormhole before, then you play the top card of your deck. You now get a second instance of a Library Access trigger. If the card you played from the top of your deck has a play effect, you can choose to draw 1 card, or resolve that play effect. So let's say you choose to draw the card. You draw the card. Now the next thing you have to do is resolve that play effect, and then now you would get around to drawing the card from the original, from playing Wild Wormhole and triggering Library Access. The other way you could do it is you play Library Access, then Wild Wormhole. You choose to draw a card first, then you play the top card of the deck, and again, if it has a play effect, you can choose to resolve it first or draw first. Okay, cool. That makes sense. And this matters for, I think, potentially some other things as well. Oh yeah, for sure. Like Hunting Witch, it matters. Full Moon, it matters. But again, you have control over that. This does mean that if you have Hunting Witch and no Amber and you play Chota Hazari, you can choose to resolve Chota Hazari's effect first. Let me just check there. Okay, yes, you can choose to resolve Chota Hazari's effect first, losing an Amber while you have none, and then gaining the one from Hunting Witch. So you end up with net 1 Amber, whereas in the previous interpretation, you would have had to do the Hunting Witch first and then lose 1 from Chota. So, yeah, that's... Ultimately, this is actually better if you're the active player because you get to choose the order of resolution. So I think it's great. Yeah, it's always better for the active player because they're the ones making the choice. You could have a card that, triggers on your opponent's turn and then they get to choose the order. What happens if I use Replicator to trigger the Reap effect of an opponent's Sanctum Guardian? Sanctum Guardian's Reap effect will do nothing. That was what it already said, but they adjusted it to say a creature cannot be moved from one player's battle line to the other player's battle line, except by effects that explicitly change control of that creature. So the reason, Sanctum Guardian says swap Sanctum Guardian with another friendly creature in your battle line. And so because of that, because Replicator can't swap Sanctum Guardian with a creature in their battle line because it's the opponent's Sanctum Guardian, it does nothing. Okay, if Doom of the Martyr and another of my creatures, there's a lot of red here. Doom of the Martyr and another of my creatures are both destroyed by damage effect like Poison Wave. Can Doom of the Martyr save my other creatures from destruction? No, when we covered that. Healing them can't prevent that. It can't remove the tag for destruction. If a card like Gateway to Deast destroys multiple creatures and Tolas is one of those creatures, does anyone gain Amber off of Tolas' ability? No, because it does not trigger until cards are actually put into discard piles, at which point Tolas is already destroyed. Makes sense. If I have out of Tolas, when my Bad Penny is destroyed, do I gain Amber even if Bad Penny goes to my hand instead of my discard pile? Yes, because it still counts as destroyed even if the destroyed effect moves it. I use my Hallowed Shield to protect my Merrick the Marked from damage, and then I attack my opponent's 3-power creature. Do I capture an Amber with Merrick's ability? No. Protection effects like Hallowed Shield prevent damage before armor, so Merrick still has 1 armor left after the fight. This comes up later in the timing chart. If my Jargoggle is destroyed on my turn and its destroyed ability lets me play a card with Omega, can I still play cards afterwards? Not usually. If Jargoggle was destroyed during your step 3, you may not play or use any more cards. Just finish triggering any more triggered effects and then move on to the next step. But if it was destroyed during your step 1, you only move on to step 2, and then you choose your house and then you do step 3. I have Pingle Who Annoys, and my opponent plays King of the Crag. Will King of the Crag take a damage before Pingle is destroyed? No, because King of the Crag's ability is a constant, so Pingle Who Annoys would trigger and deal a damage after the King of the Crag enters play, but King of the Crag's ability is a constant ability, so it happens immediately. It triggers, it applies as long as it's in play, and it destroys Pingle before the after it enters play effect can trigger. Interesting. If I have a 2-power creature with a Soul Keeper attached, my opponent has a 6-power creature and a 5-power creature, and I play Opal Knight. Okay, so I have a 2-power creature, they have 5 and 6. Opal Knight is going to destroy the 2 and 6. Do both of my opponent's creatures die, or just the 6-power one? The answer is just the 6-power one. Since Soulkeeper's effect triggers before the destroyed creatures actually leave play, it will target the 6-power creature for destruction, even though that creature is already tagged for destruction. This is because you don't have any agency in it. If you have agency, if you have the ability to make a choice, you can't choose a creature that's tagged for destruction. But because the card is picking, it just fails. I have 2 amber in my pool, and I reap with a creature. My opponent has 2 Surmeros in play. Do both Surmeros capture an amber? If so, where does the second one come from? Surmeros can only capture the 1 amber that was just gained from reaping. The active player determines which Surmeros captures it. Makes sense. You don't duplicate amber in that effect. A Scowly Keeper that I own and my opponent controls is purged with Spangler Box. Later, the Spangler Box is destroyed. When Scowly Keeper returns to play, whose control will he be under? When the Spangler Box returns Scowly Keeper to play, this counts as entering play again. So Scowly Keeper's ability again causes you to put it in play under your opponent's control. This is interesting because Scowly Keeper, this is not a play effect. It's a when it enters play. So it enters play under your opponent's control. So it does still do that. Okay. I play the card Sack of Coins with 3 amber in my pool. Can I divide the 3 damage among multiple creatures? Yes, it deals 1 damage for each amber in your pool, so it's a separate instance and can be assigned separately. I play Nerve Blast while my opponent has 2 amber in their pool and controls opposed pixies. Am I able to deal 2 damage with Nerve Blast's effect? Yes, Posed Pixies has a replacement effect that changes where the stolen amber is taken from, the common supply instead of its controller's pool. However, that amber is still considered to be stolen, and therefore the if you do condition of Nerve Blast has been satisfied. Makes sense. I reap with Nexus, which allows me to use my opponent's artifact as if it were mine. I choose to use my opponent's Shard of Greed, which lets me gain 1 amber for each friendly shard. Shard of Greed is the only shard in play. How much amber do I gain? 1. You are using Shard of Greed as if it were yours. So Shard of Greed counts itself as a friendly shard for the purposes of its ability, but that doesn't mean if your opponent has another shard, it wouldn't count. I reap with Nexus and use my opponent's Spectral Tunneler to give Nexus the ability Reap, draw a card. Can I trigger that Reap ability? Oh yes, you're still at the timing point to trigger Nexus's Reap abilities, so it can now trigger the ability granted by Spectral Tunneler. That's interesting, I never thought of that, but it actually makes sense with the way the ability resolution works, because you're at the timing point, you say, are there any things that trigger at this time point? Yes, okay, trigger it. Now go back and look, are there any that trigger here? And at that point, there would be the additional one. That makes sense. Okay, I reap with Replicator and use its ability to trigger the reap effect of my opponent's Sequus, as if I controlled it. Which player's pool does Sequus capture amber from? Sequus captures 1 amber from your opponent's pool. You are using Sequus as if you controlled it, so the default capture rules cause the amber to be captured from your opponent's pool. My opponent has Surmeros in play. If I play Dimension Door and then reap with the creature, does Surmeros capture the amber from the creature reaping? No, because you're stealing instead of reaping. I'm going to try to go faster here. My opponent forges 2 keys on their turn. On my next turn, I play Keyhammer. What happens? Keyhammer only affects a single key. You will choose one of the 2 keys your opponent forged on their previous turn and unforge it. Oh, interesting, because it does say unforge it, the one they forged on the previous. Okay. Yep, and that'll matter when colors matter, which they don't yet. I choose Logos as my active house. I play Phase Shift, then play a Mimicry as a copy of Fogify. Can I still play another non-Logos card using Phase Shift's effect? Oh, that's an interesting one. No, because Phase Shift grants you permission to play 1 non-Logos card this turn. Playing Mimicry uses up this effect, as you would not have been able to play Mimicry without Phase Shift's effect. And that works as you would expect, even if it sounds a little fudgy to me, but it makes sense. Can I Mimicry a Eureka if I've already played another card this turn? No, because the alpha won't trigger, and therefore the Mimicry just stays in your hand. It goes back to your hand. Can I play Mimicry as a copy of Eureka as the first thing I do? Yes. Now your Mimicry, which is Eureka, has alpha, and it works. My opponent has 10 amber and is about to forge their second key. I play Interdimensional Graft. My opponent has Forge Master in play. On their turn, they forge a key for 6 amber. What happens to the remaining 4 amber? The effect of Interdimensional Graft and Forge Master Og both occur at the same time step, after a key is forged. So the active player, who's your opponent because it's their turn that they're forging on, chooses which to resolve first. It makes more sense for them to resolve Og first. Okay, Gabos Longarm attack. My Gabos Longarms attacks my opponent's Amber Imp. Is Gabos Longarm's damage prevented by elusive, or can I deal that damage to another creature? You may still deal Gabos Longarm's damage to another creature. Elusive only prevents damage dealt to the creature with the elusive ability during the fight. That is interesting. Okay, that begs the question. Wait. Huh. Oh, and it only prevents damage dealt to the creature with the elusive ability during the fight, and it's before fight. I feel like they should have clarified that better. Unless I'm just misunderstanding. I think they should have clarified that better. My opponent plays Shadow of Dis, forcing me to treat my creature's text boxes as if they were blank until their next turn. I play Silvertooth. Does Silvertooth enter play ready? Yes. Shadow of Dis only affects creatures while they're in play. Silvertooth's ability modifies how it enters play, so it is in effect before the Shadow of Dis effect applies to it. This is, again, a little, feels a little fudgy, but it's right. It just makes sense. So maybe at some point they'll need to get a little more detailed in that, or change their templating, but it absolutely makes sense. Or they could not. I mean, it's fine. My opponent plays Shadow of Dis. I have 2 copies of Glimmer in my hand. May I play them both? No, because Alpha is a card restriction that's active while it's in your hand before placing the card. Yeah. After you've played a card on a step, you may not play an Alpha card, even if its text box will be considered blank once it is in play. Makes sense. My opponent plays Shadow of Dis. I have a Duskwitch in my hand. May I play Duskwitch, then play other cards afterwards? Yes, because the Omega would trigger after it enters play, at which point it's blank. Of course, Duskwitch no longer causes your creatures to enter play ready. I have Arani Wristclocks next to a Little Nif. I attack one of my opponent's creatures with Arani Wristclocks, but he's destroyed during the fight. Does Little Nif's ability still allow me to steal 1 Amber? Yes, because the neighbor doesn't need to survive for Little Nif to steal the Amber. Makes sense. My opponent has 2 creatures in play, and I have none. I play Neutron Shark and use its play effect to destroy an enemy creature as well as the Neutron Shark. If the top card of my deck does not belong to House Logos, can I repeat Neutron Shark's ability and destroy my opponent's other creature? No, because the destruction of Neutron Shark and the first enemy creature resolves fully before you proceed with the rest of Neutron Shark's ability. Because Neutron Shark is no longer in play, its Play Fight Reap ability is no longer active and cannot be triggered again. Interestingly, because the ability has already been triggered, it does complete, meaning you do discard the top card of your deck, but you don't repeat. You can't repeat because there's nothing to read and repeat. Okay, cool. Well, that's all the FAQ changes. Now we get to the actual timing chart, which is it's really nice. I like it. So the black text here is game steps, and the red is common card effects and showing when they happen in order. So the first clarification here is on the Forge a Key step, step 1. Start of turn effects trigger the very first thing, but they are during step 1. They are part of step 1. Then you check to see if you're able to forge, and if you're able, you spend Amber, and if you forge your 3rd key, you immediately win the game. And after a key is forged, effects trigger. So, for example, if there's like there's a strange gizmo, and if you have a sting and your opponent has a strange gizmo and they forge, they spend the Amber during this part, and this is when they would give you the Amber. Oh, you know what? Wait. I think, yeah, when forging keys. So when they spend it, they give it to you. So during this step 2 of, during part 2 of step 1, they would have to give you the Amber, and then Strange Gizmo would trigger and blow everything up. All right, step 2, choose a house. Part 1 is choose which house will be the active house for this turn. Then anything that triggers after you choose a house triggers, and then part 2 is you may take all the cards from your archives and put them in your hand if you want. Step 3, You may perform these actions in any order and repeat them any number of times. You can play a card. Part 1 of play a card is if the card's a creature, artifact, or upgrade, put it into play. If it's an action, reveal it. And after you play it, you're going to discard it. That'll be at the very end here. Part 2 is resolve the amber bonus on the card. And then after that, any play effects or after play, enters play effects would trigger. If you use a creature to fight, part 1 is you exhaust it, and you choose the creature they're fighting. Part 2, before part 2, any before, fight, hazardous, or assault would trigger. Then part 2 happens, creatures deal their damage to each other simultaneously. And after that, any fight effects, after creature fight effects, and after creature is used effects would trigger. If you use a creature to reap, first you exhaust it, then you gain an amber. Then any reap effects or after creature reap effects or after creature is used effects would trigger. If you use an action or omni ability, first you exhaust it, the creature or artifact, and then you resolve the effects, and then if it's a creature and there are any after creatures used effects, you would trigger them. Step 4, you just ready each of your exhausted cards. That's not complicated. And step 5, first you draw cards, and then end of turn effects trigger. The only card I think this matters for right now is Titan Librarian, and this just clarifies you would do the archiving after you draw cards. All right, there's a clarification to how damage is dealt. The following steps occur each time damage is dealt to one or more creatures. First, apply effects that prevent damage. So this is where Hallowed Shield, Shield of Justice, Potion of Invulnerability, things like that would trigger. So first, apply effects that prevent damage. Ward would also trigger there when that comes out. And then second, you use armor to prevent damage. If there's any damage after the first part of this, then it would be absorbed by armor. And then lastly, you deal all remaining damage. Creatures with damage equal to or greater than their power on them are tagged for destruction. And then there's a clarification to destroyed timing. The following steps occur each time one or more cards would be destroyed. First, cards are tagged for destruction. Then, any destroyed effects trigger. After that, each destroyed creature is put into its owner's discard pile, and the battle line immediately shifts to fill in each destroyed creature's place. And then any after creature's destroyed effects trigger. Oh yeah, and here's, so, important clarification up here. Whenever two or more effects occur at the same time step on this chart, the order that those effects resolve in is determined by the active player. And effects that use the term each time occur at the same timing point as effects that use the term after. That's very important. So what that means is, for example, Tolas, Soul Snatcher, Nefru, all those effects that care about a creature being destroyed each time or whatever, they happen at the same time as the after a creature is destroyed. Which is after it gets put in the discard pile. Or if it got moved, it still counts toward this. It's even though it actually didn't go to the discard pile, it still counts. That was clarified as well. Again, this also means that if you have a Hunting Witch on the board and you play a Chota Hazri and you have no amber, you can choose whether you resolve Chota Hazri's effect first or Hunting Witch's effect first, even though Hunting Witch says each time. So yeah, I think ultimately that this actually reduces the amount. Before we were talking about having a before we had to worry about there was a discussion where we were talking about there being a before, when, and an after, and now we know there's no when. There's only a before and an after, and there are very few before. And now it's been clarified where before happens. Most things are after, and even if it says each time or when, it's still after. and the active player gets to choose the order of resolving those. Uh, that that makes sense. I hope, as they release cards going forward into the future, they'll consider changing that wording a little bit. Like on Hunting Witch, to say, for example, after a creature enters play, or after you play a creature, not necessarily on Hunting Witch itself, but on future cards like that, just to so we don't even have to have the clarification in future sets. But anyway, it does make a lot of sense. I think ultimately this just makes the rules way simpler. Some of these, I think there's a lot of pearl clutching over Archimedes, and it really just wasn't as big of a problem as people made it out to be. But I'm still glad they clarified it. It's a much more reasonable card now, and you don't have even the potential for that really crazy situation. Reducing the number of steps was a great move. I thought what I expected, and I'm really glad they didn't do this, but what I kind of expected was they were going to have the complicated timing that we had talked about, but they were going to just clarify it and have it laid out in this detailed thing. And instead, what they did is they condensed and eliminated some things. There's a saying that perfection is achieved not when there's nothing left to add, but when there's nothing left to remove. And I'm really glad they decided to go that way with this rule set. It really is an improvement, and I'm glad they did it. So thank you, FFG. I look forward to playing. There's not a lot of times where I think these changes will even matter very much, but I look forward to playing with these rules in effect and just having less crazy stuff to worry about. So anyway, that's it. I hope you found this helpful. If you have any questions that you still have after seeing this, feel free to leave them in comments, and I'll try to answer them to the best of my ability. There's also great discussions that go on in the Keyforge Facebook group. And on top of that, of course, sending queries directly to FFG is a great idea. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed this. I hope it was helpful, and I really enjoyed walking through it. I'm really glad for the rules updates, and looking forward to playing you under them, and we'll forge some keys. Thanks.